The United Nations General Assembly chamber, usually a place of structured dialogue and diplomatic formalities, buzzed with an uneasy energy. Security had doubled overnight. Rumors of an unscheduled address by Burkina Faso's transitional president, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, had spread like wildfire across diplomatic circles. It wasn't just the surprise appearance, it was the timing. Just days earlier, international media had reported that Israeli reconnaissance technology was being used across parts of West Africa, under private military contracts. Tensions in the Sahel were already boiling over, and Traoré's government, known for its uncompromising stance against foreign interference, had cut ties with France and was increasingly aligning with non-Western powers. And now, here he was, in New York, unexpected, uninvited, and unafraid. The arrival. Traoré entered through the grand double doors of the assembly hall, flanked by a modest delegation. No flashy suits, no national flags draped in formality. Just military-style fatigues and the unmistakable Burkina sash, red, green, and gold. He walked like a man who had nothing to lose. As he approached the podium, a hush fell over the room. President Traoré, the UN president said with polite caution, "You have been granted 5 minutes under emergency request." Traoré nodded curtly, then took a long moment to scan the chamber before speaking. His voice, measured but laced with restrained fury, filled the hall. The speech. Greater than, distinguished delegates. I did not come here to beg. I came to remind this body what it claims to represent. Justice, sovereignty, accountability. But what we are witnessing, in Gaza, in Burkina Faso, in Mali, is the opposite. We see children murdered by drones. Nations destabilized by weaponized aid. And all of it dressed in the costume of democracy. The room stirred. Delegates from the EU looked at one another uneasily. The US representative lowered their gaze. The Israeli delegation froze, sensing something bigger was coming. Greater than, to Prime Minister Netanyahu, I say this. You have made your case before this body many times. Now I make mine. The same drones you deploy over Rafah have appeared over Fata and Gorma. The same military consultants we see in Gaza are now in West Africa, training mercenaries, guiding strikes, fueling unrest. This is not counterterrorism. This is neo-colonial warfare disguised as security cooperation. Gasps erupted. Greater than, and let me be clear. You are not above international law. Some delegates applauded. Others walked out. Cameras from Al Jazeera and RT panned in. CNN cut to live coverage. Social media exploded with hashtags. Hashtag Traoré at UN, hashtag Global South rises, hashtag Burkina defiant. The Israeli ambassador whispered something into a staffer's ear and stormed out. But Traoré wasn't finished. The closing line. Greater than, we are not pawns on your chessboard. Africa will no longer play defense while others profit from our suffering. Today, we raise our voice. Tomorrow, we build a new system. With that, he stepped down, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. Aftermath. The fallout was immediate. The U.S. State Department issued a carefully worded statement emphasizing dialogue and regional cooperation. Israel's government accused Traoré of deliberate disinformation and called the speech a propaganda stunt. African youth across social media hailed Traoré as the voice of a new anti-imperial order. UN officials whispered behind closed doors, he just blew the doors off the assembly. The skyscrapers of Manhattan shimmered outside the bulletproof glass windows, but inside the suite, the air was thick with tension. The world had not yet digested Traoré's explosive speech at the UN, but the young leader was already several moves ahead. He had convened a closed-door meeting, no press, no translators, no UN observers. Only carefully vetted delegates from Mali, Algeria, South Africa, Nicaragua, and Iran. This was not diplomacy, it was a war council. Inside the room, Traoré sat at the head of the conference table. No suit, still in uniform, his sidearm holstered, an unspoken signal, this is not business as usual. Beside him was Colonel Seydou Sana, Burkina Faso's top military intelligence officer. He slid a thick envelope across the table. Greater than, inside this, Sana said, is hard evidence. Satellite imagery showing Israeli-made drones operating out of covert airstrips in Niger. Contracts signed by third-party security firms, shell companies with Mossad ties. Audio intercepts from a Western-trained Sahel warlord referencing, blue-eyed instructors, coordinating raids on villages near the gold mines. A hush fell over the room. The Sudanese ambassador, his brow furrowed, broke the silence. Are you suggesting Israel is arming or directing militia groups in the Sahel? Traoré leaned forward, his eyes burning. Greater than, not suggesting. Stating, and they're not alone. France supplies logistics. The US offers intel. But it's Israel's tactics that are now being exported like weapons-grade ideology. The dossier code named, Project Echo. Colonel Sana handed out encrypted tablets. On screen, an internal Burkina intelligence briefing titled, Project Echo. The core claim, that Israel's defense contractors, through proxies, were providing advanced drone warfare training and facial recognition tech to private militias, claiming it was counterinsurgency support. In reality, these tools were being used to eliminate local resistance leaders, intimidate mining unions, and create instability that justified foreign intervention. Traoré spoke again, measured and defiant. Greater than, they are using our chaos as cover for their experiments. Just like Gaza is their lab, now the Sahel is becoming their prototype for automated warfare. Africa is being digitized into a battlefield. The real motive. Resources. The room's tone shifted from concern to outrage when a slideshow began showing the map of mineral-rich regions in Burkina Faso and Mali. Rare earth metals, lithium, gold, uranium. Greater than, this isn't about terrorism, Traoré said. It's about the new scramble for Africa. Only this time, they're using algorithms instead of armies. The warning in the offer. We're not here to whine, Traoré said. We're here to organize. He then unveiled a bold initiative. A coalition of non-aligned nations to demand an international investigation into foreign military and surveillance operations in Africa. The formation of an African Sovereignty Tribunal, independent of the UN, backed by BRICS-aligned legal experts. A call to expel all foreign military contractors from African soil unless operating under African Union oversight. Greater than, we will no longer allow our skies to be patrolled by ghosts. If the UN remains silent, we will speak louder. If NATO plays blind, we will open our own courts. Global reaction begins. Meanwhile, back in Tel Aviv, Mossad had already decrypted part of Traoré's speech draft before it aired. The Prime Minister's advisors were in panic mode. A top-level cabinet meeting was called. Greater than, if Traoré leaks, Project Echo, to the press, one advisor said, we will be forced to admit involvement or lie under oath. Either way, it's a diplomatic nightmare. Netanyahu responded coldly, greater than, then we crush his credibility before he crushes ours. Final shot of the episode. Back in the Waldorf suite, Traoré stands alone at the window, looking out at Manhattan's skyline, bathed in nightlight and power. Colonel Sana approaches quietly and says, they'll come after you now. Traoré doesn't blink. Greater than, let them. I'm already at war. The camera zooms in on his face, young, resolute, haunted, but ready. Location, United Nations General Assembly Hall. Time, midday, final day of the emergency session. The atmosphere in the UN chamber was heavier than usual. Tension hummed beneath the surface like a live wire. The room was packed. Security was visible. Foreign ministers whispered nervously. Cameras were trained on two figures seated at opposite ends of the hall. Ibrahim Traoré, composed, alert, unreadable. Benjamin Netanyahu, flanked by security, arms folded, jaw clenched. Rumors had circulated all morning. Traoré had requested a second address, breaking UN tradition. Technically, it was unprecedented. But the African and Global South blocs had co-signed the motion, forcing the UN to accept. Netanyahu was scheduled to speak after Traoré. The stakes, global legitimacy. Traoré takes the podium, one last time. He approached the microphone in silence. No applause this time, just silence. The world knew this was no longer a speech. It was a warning. Greater than, yesterday, I came here to speak. Today, I stand here to act. He pulled out a sealed letter bearing Burkina Faso's official seal. Greater than, this is a formal submission to the United Nations Human Rights Council, requesting an investigation into the export of foreign surveillance and weapons systems used in illegal operations across the Sahel. He scanned the room slowly. Greater than, specifically, the use of Israeli-designed drones in extrajudicial killings. The deployment of biometric databases to target political activists. The financing of proxy militias with multinational mining interests. A buzz rippled through the chamber. Delegates whispered. Netanyahu leaned forward in his seat. He names names. Traoré held up a second document, this one marked, confidential. Greater than, I submit, also, names. Of private contractors, of intermediaries, of political allies, and if this body ignores this request, I will release this information to the global press, unedited, unredacted, and unfiltered. A stunned silence. The room had never seen a leader from the global south threaten the entire system from within it. He continued, voice steady, steel beneath every word. Greater than, for decades, Israel has operated under the myth of exceptionalism. But let this be clear. The pain of a Palestinian child is no different than the pain of a Burkina child. The death of one for minerals is no less obscene than the death of one for land. The Israeli delegation walked out. Traoré didn't flinch. A global realignment begins. At the same time, live broadcasts showed reactions erupting globally. In Accra, thousands gathered in front of the parliament waving Pan-African flags. In South Africa, students projected Traoré's speech onto the side of the Union buildings. In Paris, protests broke out demanding France end the silent war in Africa. In Tel Aviv, the government convened a national security meeting in emergency session. In Washington, a White House aide turned to the Secretary of State and whispered. Greater than, this isn't just about Burkina Faso anymore. This is the beginning of something bigger. The final blow, a new order. Traoré's voice dropped lower now, more intimate, yet more defiant. Greater than, we are forming a new coalition. One that refuses to be managed by empires in decline. If the UN will not protect us, we will build our own court. Our own system, our own future. Then came his final line, slow, deliberate, unforgettable. Greater than, Mr. Netanyahu, you are not the first to underestimate the voice of the South. But you may be the last. Then he walked off the podium. Aftermath. Around the world. In the hours that followed. Traoré Tribunal trended in 48 countries. Leaked emails from a private Israeli defense firm confirmed covert drone sales to Sahel-based militias. The African Union called for an emergency summit. BRICS issued a statement supporting an independent investigation. Israel accused Traoré of launching an information war. France remained silent, and in a darkened situation room somewhere in Tel Aviv, Netanyahu's advisor spoke what many feared. Greater than, we may have just witnessed the beginning of the end of Western control over Africa. Final scene. One world. Two futures. Cut to Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso. A crowd gathers outside the presidential palace. Young people cheer. A mural of Traoré is being painted on a wall, next to Thomas Sankaro's. Over the sound of drums and voices, one young protester looks into the camera and says, greater than, he spoke for all of us. Not just Africa, the whole world that's been silenced. Cut to black. Greater than, the global south has found its voice. And it speaks in revolution. Transfer to Urdu.